Today's daf is Yevamos daf Vav, and we are 7 lines from the bottom of daf Hey Amud Beis. Elo Itzterach. Today's daf is being learned as a schus refuah shleima for Vadi ben Miriam Leah, Moshe Abba ben Devora bas Mecha, Shmuel ben Tehila, Elazar ben Shalom ben Fega Rachel, Sarah Nechama bas Rus Malka, Baruch ben Rachel, Malka Miriam bas Esther, and Esther Kreindel bas Devora. So we're continuing in the sugya of Asay Doicha Lois Asay in the beginning of Masechtas Yevamos. We're in the midst of a digression, and it's just worth regrouping for a moment so that we can immediately segue back into the cheshbon of the daf. So the first sugya and the first halacha of Masechtas Yevamos states that if an erva falls Yibum, there's no mitzvahs Yibum, there's no mitzvahs chalitza. The Gemara in Daf Gimel Amud Beis brought a brisa that said the mekar to this halach is a pasuk. It says aleh in the mitzvah of Yibum, Yevama Yavay aleh. It says aleh by the erva of achos isha, and we learn that the iser achos isha would be true even b'makom Yibum, meaning there is no mitzvahs Yibum b'makom erva. And the Gemara asked the kash. It sounds like, had we not had a drasha, had we not had a pasuk, had we not had aleha aleha, we would have thought that if there's a face-off between Yibum and Isurei Arayas, there would be a mitzvah of Yibum. It's only a dank the drasha that we say that there's no Yibum b'makom erva. But without a pasuk, you would think there is pashit, because we would say that the asay of Yibum is doicha the lois asay of Arayas. But the Gemara asked the kasha, it's true asay is doicha lois asay. But the whole makar that asay is doicha lois asay is the fact that kalayim is doicha tzitz, that tzitzis is doicha kalayim. Kalayim is an ordinary lois asay. It says in the Torah lois sul b'shatnes. So we have a makar that an asay can be doicha an ordinary lois asay. But mehecha teisi, an asay should be able to be doicha a lois asay sheyesh by karas. And being that for someone that violates one of the Isurei Arayas, the punishment is karas. That means the lois asay is a more chomer lois asay. We have no makar that an asay could be doicha such a lois asay. So, freak the Gemara, why do I need a pasuk aleh to tell me that there's no yibum b'makom erva? It's pashut there's no yibum b'makom erva, because Isurei erva is a lois asay sheyesh by karas. Yibum is an asay, and although asay is doicha lois asay, but in asay doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. So the Gemara's exercise that we're in the middle of right now is trying to find a makar that maybe asay really is doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. And if we can find such a makar, that would explain why we need a pasuk of aleh to tell me that Yibum's not doicha the Isurei Arayas, because without a pasuk, we would assume that asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. So the Gemara at the end of Daf Hey Amud Beis made 3 attempts to try to prove this idea that maybe an asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. The first was from the fact that Mila is doicha Shabbos. We do bris Mila on Shabbos. Mila is a mitzvah asay. Shabbos is a lois asay sheyesh by karas. Yet the mitzvah of Mila is doicha Shabbos. So that should be maybe the makar that asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. The Gemara said no. Why? Because although it's true, Mila is an asay, and Shabbos is a lois asay sheyesh by karas, but Mila is not an ordinary asay. Mila is an asay shenichrasu aleh yud gimel brisais, and it's for that reason you can't learn anything from Mila. Then the Gemara said maybe we can learn it from the fact that the Korban Pesach was also doicha Shabbos. Korban Pesach is an asay; it's the 5th mitzvah asay in the Torah according to the count of the chinuch. Shabbos again is a lois asay sheyesh by karas. So if Pesach is doicha Shabbos, so maybe that's the makar that asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. Gemara says you can't prove anything for Pesach either, because Pesach is unique in the sense, shekain karas. If someone violates the Korban Pesach, he's chayiv karas, which is a tremendous anomaly in the world of mitzvahs asay. So it's not a raya that an ordinary asay would be doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. And the Gemara said maybe we can learn it from the Korban Tamid. The Korban Tamid was born on Shabbos. The Korban Tamid at the end of the day was a mitzvah asay. Shabbos is a lois asay sheyesh by karas. So maybe we can prove from there that asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas. The Gemara said you can't learn from the Korban Tamid either, because the Korban Tamid was Tamid. It was brought Tmidim Kisidron. It was Tader. And that's a Maila and Asay. And maybe that's why it's Doicha Lois Asay Sheyesh by Karas. But maybe an ordinary Asay is not. Then the Gemara said, maybe I could learn it from a Tzad HaShava. The Gemara knocked that out as well. So where we are right now is we're trying to find a makar that asay is doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares. If we do that, then we're going to be tzefrida, because then we would understand why we needed a leo to tell me that the asay of Yibum is not doichel the lois asay of a rai. Says the Gemara, it's the 7 lines from the bottom of that Amud Beis. Maybe the reason we had to come on to a leo, and maybe the makar that asay is ordinarily doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares is from. I mean, I would have thought tasting and keep it over. We can learn it from the mitzvah of kibbut of a. So what do you see in kibbut of a? That an asay is doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares. The Tanya, it's based on the following price. Yochel yehi kibbut of a doichel Shabbos. I would have thought that kibbut of a should be doichel Shabbos. Talmud Leimer, it says in the pasuk, ish imoy va'aviv tiro ve'es shabsoisai tishmoiru, and the punchline is the end of the pasuk, ani Hashem Elokeichem. And we learn from there that kulchem chayovim b'choyr. Meaning, if there's a face-off between ish imoy va'aviv tiro and shabsoisai tishmoiru, and as the Gemara is about to explain, meaning if your father or your mother tell you to be mechal Shabbos, what should you do? Should you listen to your parents, ish imoy va'aviv tiro, or should you keep Shabbos? That's shabsoisai tishmoiru. And the teretz is ani Hashem Elokeichem, that you're supposed to listen to Hashem and not listen to your parents. So we learn from a pasuk that if your father or mother tell you to be mechal Shabbos, don't listen to your father or mother, rather keep Shabbos. So here's the right. Says the Gemara, my love, it's not clear from the brisa what exactly the chil Shabbos was that your parents told you to do. But presumably it was a regular chil Shabbos. They told you to violate one of the lamites malachas. For example, the Amud Aleph, shchoitli, shecht for me, which is one of the lamites malachas, basheli, cook for me, which is one of the lamites malachas, and still you need a pasuk to tell me don't listen to your father or mother. And it's only because the Torah said that we know you're not supposed to listen. But had there not been a pasuk dachi, you would have thought that the asay of kibbut avim is doichel, the lois asay of Shabbos. The asay of kibbut avim is an asay, and Shabbos is a lois asay sheyesh by kares. So you see, l'chura that asay is doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares. Again, why? Because if asay is not doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares, why do I need a brisa and a drasha to tell me that if your father tells you be mechal Shabbos, you're not supposed to listen? Of course I'm not supposed to listen. My obligation to listen to my father's an asay. To keep Shabbos is a lois asay sheyesh by kares. The in asay doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares. Elamai asay really is doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares. So the Gemara says maybe this is the makar, and that's why I need a leo to tell me that the asay of Yibum is not doichel to lois asay of Reid. But the Gemara says lie. No, maybe that's not what the brisa is talking about. Maybe the brisa that says that we need a pasuk to tell me that if your father would tell you to be mechal Shabbos, you're not supposed to listen, is not discussing when your father told you to be mechal Shabbos in the regular lamites malacha sense. Rather, lav the mechamer. It's talking about where your father told you to be mechal Shabbos, where if you would be mechal Shabbos, you wouldn't be chayiv kares. All it would be a lois asay. What's an example of that? So the Gemara gives the one example, which is lav the mechamer. So we know that just like a person's not allowed to do malach on Shabbos, his animals are not allowed to do malach on Shabbos either. It's what's known as shvisas behemo. Now, the idea that a person's animals have to rest on Shabbos is an iser asay. There's an asay that states that just like you're obligated to rest, your animals are obligated to rest as well. Stating that if a person would do malacha with his animal on Shabbos, so then the iser shvisas behemo would be upgraded from an asay into a lois asay. A person that does melacha tzizamin mitzayin behema on Shabbos violated the lav of mechamer. So the lav of mechamer is a general category of an animal that's doing melacha, but that the baal ha-animal, the owner of the animal, is doing melacha together with it. The chiddush of the lav of mechamer is that it's an ordinary lois asay, and in contrast to chil Shabbos, where there's a kares and a misas bezdin and a chatas, when it comes to the lav of mechamer, that's not going to be the case. But the point is it's possible for a person to be mechal Shabbos, and it's not going to be a lav sheyesh by kares. So it says the Gemara, maybe that's what the brisa is talking about. Avada gevist. If a person's father would tell him, go be mechal Shabbos, of course you don't listen. And you don't have to come onto a pasuk of ishkimay v'aviv tiro v'shabsoisai tishmoiru and Hashem Elokeichem to teach it to me, because it's obvious. Ein asay to keep it over aim doichel lois asay sheyesh by kares the Shabbos. You know why we need a brisa. You know why we need a pasuk for a case where the father would tell the son to be mechal Shabbos, where it is not a lois asay sheyesh by kares. He would say do lav the mechaber. Lav the mechaber is an ordinary lois asay. So there you would have thought say asay doichel lois asay. Kamash b'lan ani Hashem the smichos between the mitzvah of Yiras Avayim and the mitzvah of Shabbos teaches me that over here it's different. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, you're not supposed to listen to your parents. Says the Gemara, okay, so if you're telling me that the Brisa is discussing Lav the Mechamer, now I have another problem. Why? Because I feel hachi leidachi. What did the Brisa say? If your father tells you to do Lav the Mechamer, the way we understand it now, don't listen. Really? We know Asayis Doichel Loisase. We learn it from the smichas between Loisel Lashatnes and Gedilim Tasaloch. Why don't we learn from Ish Imay Vav Tiro, Veshab Soisai Tishmer Ani Hashem Elokeichem, that Asay should not be Doichel Loisase. Meaning, I got it. It has nothing to do with Allah. It has nothing to do with Asay being Doichel Loisase Sheish by cars, because the price is not talking about a Shabbos that has a cars. Okay, then it's talking about a regular loisaseh. If it's talking about a regular loisaseh, I have a whole nother problem. So let's prove from this drasha that aseh is not doichel loisaseh. From the smichos of Kalayim B'tzitzis, I learned aseh is doichel loisaseh. Well, now from the smichos of Shabbos and Kibbut Avayim, I should learn that aseh is not doichel loisaseh. Maybe you'll tell me, Shani Lavi the Shabbos the Chamim. No. You can't learn from Shabbos that Aseh is not Doichel Loisaseh. You know why? Because all you see is that Aseh is not Doichel the Lav of Shabbos. The Lav of Shabbos is a very, very Chomer Lav. Rashi says, why is it so Chomer? So he sends us to Erev and Daf Samach Tes, where we have related Reidites, where the Gemara says that a Mechalel Shabbos is Ka'oived Avodas Kechavim. That if someone's Mechalel Shabbos, he has a din of an Oived Avodas Zah. Now, it's only true if someone's Mechalel Shabbos, but for Hesia, and this is already a tremendous, tremendous discussion in the Poskim, but the point is, you see the concept. There's an idea that if someone's Mechalel Shabbos, it's Ka'oived Avodas Kechavim, which tells you that the whole idea of Shabbos is very, very common. So, to tell me that from the fact that Kibbut Avayim is not Doichel Shabbos, that's a raya says not Doichel Lois. I say that already I wouldn't do, because I would say maybe it's only the Lav of Shabbos that's like that. But the Gemara says it's not true. It's not the case. Now I know that because as we're about to see, the Tana in another brisa actually steltzu this brisa of Ish Imay V'Aviv Tiro Veshab Soisai Tishmoiru to another Lav. A lav that has nothing to do with Shabbos. So you see that even though Shabbos is true, is unique, and as far as lavim go, Mechalel Shabbos is Ka'oived Avodas Kechavim, but it doesn't mean that if you find the halach in Hilchos Shabbos, you can't tell it to other areas in halacha, because in fact, as we're about to see, the Tana did that. The Tana we're learning to the Brayso. You would think that if a father tells his son, who was a kohen, be mitam, I want you to go into a Beis HaKfaras. Told him to do something for him, but doing that thing would require him to enter a Beis HaKfaras. It would require him to be matam. So you would think you should listen. Or let's say a person finds an aveda, he has a mitzvah vashavas aveda, parakelu mitzias. So what if the person's father tells him, don't return that aveda? You would think you should listen to Talmud. It says, Ish imay v'aviv tiro, we learn from this pasuk that you're not supposed to listen. Now, you're going to tell me that this pasuk is only talking about Shabbos, and Shabbos is unique. So how are we telling it to the Issur for a kohen to be metame tumes? How are we telling it to the lav of loisucha l'salem and the mitzvah saseh of hashavas avedu? All the halachas of Elam mitzias. Bal karchach. What do you see? It's muchach that the fact that the Torah told us the Joshua by Shabbos doesn't make it exclusive to Shabbos. What's the Gemara's kasha? So the Gemara's kasha is that if you're going to tell me that the pasuk's talking about lav the mechamer, and that's why we needed a pasuk to tell me, don't listen to your father, because without a pasuk, I would think I say you should listen to him. So then what we should say is that the maskana of the drasha is that you're not supposed to listen to your father, and maybe that should be a makar that aseh is not doichel loisaseh. So why did we learn from the smichos between loisil bashatnes and gdilim tasilach that aseh is doichel loisaseh? Maybe we should learn from the smichos of ish imay v'aviv tiro ve'esh nafsoisai tishmoiru that aseh is really not doichel loisaseh. So just to stop for 1 second and recap what we just did, because it's important. The Gemara is about to answer the question. It's going to be in one line, but we have to chazer over the kasha. So we have a brisa. The brisa says, "Ish imay v'aviv tiro ve'eshab soisai tishmoiru ani Hashem Elokeichem." That's the pasuk. Chazal learned from here that if your father tells you to be mechal Shabbos, you would have thought you should listen. Talmud loymer from the smichos of this drasha, from the fact that the pasuk says, "Ani Hashem Elokeichem." You listen to me, you don't listen to your father. That you're not supposed to listen. And really, what emerged from the cheshbon of the beginning of the daf is that there's really 2 ways you can understand the brisa. You can understand that the brisa is discussing a case where a father told the son, "Be mechal Shabbos" in the lamed tes malacha sense, where it's alois haseh sheyesh by garas. And still we need a pasuk to say that you shouldn't listen to your father. If that's the case, the Gemara says, this would be a makar that asay is doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras. Because if asay is not doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras, you wouldn't need a pasuk to tell me that you shouldn't listen to your father. It'd be obvious you don't listen to your father. Because what's the shayla? Your father told you to be Michal Shabbos. Listening to your father is an asay. Being Michal Shabbos is the loisa asay sheyesh bekaras. They ain't asay doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras. So this would be a makar that asay is doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras. That's one way to learn the Brisa. Another way to learn the Brisa is that the Brisa is not talking about a father who told his son to be Michal Shabbos in the Lamed Tes Malacha sense, but rather it's talking about when he told him to do Lav the Mechamer. If he told him to do Lav the Mechamer, all he's telling him to do is to do a loisa asay. That's why you would have thought that you should listen to your father, because asay is doicha loisa asay. Kamashmal on the pasuk, you don't listen to your father. The Gemara is saying, if that's the way you learn the Brisa, then l'chura we should prove that asay is never doicha loisa asay. Because if at the end of the day, you're not supposed to listen to your father, so that means at the end of the day, maybe asay is not doicha loisa asay. So why did we learn from Kalayim B'tzitzis asay is doicha loisa asay? Maybe learn from this drasha that asay is not doicha loisa asay, which means you have a choice. You can learn that the Brisa is talking about what the father told the son to be Michal Shabbos Lamed Tes Malachas. You can learn it's talking about what the father told the son to do Lav the Mechaber. Either way, you're going to walk away with a major chiddush. If you learn the Brisa is talking about what the father told the son to be Michal Shabbos, the chiddush is going to be asay is doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras. What's the makar from the Havamina, from the fact that you need a pasuk? If you learn that it's talking about Lav the Mechamer, then the chiddush is going to be that asay is not doicha loisa asay. What's the makar from the maskana of the drasha? From the fact that at the end of the day, the Torah is telling you you shouldn't listen to your father. So the problem is that either way you go, we're really walking away with a very, very big chiddush. So the Gemara says, how are you supposed to learn this brisa? So the Gemara says that la'olam mishum de'ikol mifrach malahanach shekein hechsher mitzvah. So the Gemara's maskana, the Gemara's resolution of the way you're supposed to learn this brisa is a little bit unclear, and there's a major machloikas between Rashi and Tosfos how to learn the Gemara. In fact, Rashi learns one way, Tosfos learns 180 degrees differently from the way Rashi learns. We're going to learn the Gemara the way Rashi learns it, and that is, well, the brisa is talking about what the father told the son to be Michal Shabbos in the Lamed Tes Malacha sense. If that's the case, should we bring a raya from here that asay is doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras, which, by the way, is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's going to be very helpful for the sugya, because that's really what the Gemara is trying to figure out. If the Gemara has a makar that asay is doicha loisa sheyesh bekaras, then it understands why we need it allow to tell me that Yibum is not doicha the surei arais. But the Gemara says no. You know why? Mishum shekein hechsher mitzvah. And what that means is the way Rashi explains, which is a chiddush, because Rashi is going to explain the word hechsher mitzvah very different than the way the words hechsher mitzvah are applied in other areas in Shas, and that is that you can't shtel to Yibum to an ordinary mitzvah. And the reason you can't shtel to Yibum to an ordinary mitzvah is because Yibum, there's always another option. The other option is you can always do chalitza. So it's true you can prove from here that asay is doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras. Because if asay was not doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras, then why would I need a pasuk to tell me don't listen to your father? So, okay, Gavaldi, so that just helped us. That we just solved our riddle. We figured out the sugya. Now you need a law. The Gemara says, no, it doesn't help you for our sugya. Because our sugya is not a regular set. Our sugya, you want Yibum to be doicha. Yibum is a biyah. So that should be doicha, the isurei biyah of Arais, to chalitza. Chalitza is not a biyah, and then you won't have a problem. And like this, you won't have to be over any isurim. So being that Yibum is different than an ordinary mitzvah. That's why at the end of the day, you can't learn anything from the fact that you see asay's doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras from ish imoy va'aviv tiro the eshab soisai tishmoiru, which brings us back to where we started, and then is what is the makar that asay is doicha loisa asay sheyesh bekaras, for which I need a leah to tell me that the asay of Yibum is not going to be doicha the loisa asay of Arai. Says the Gemara, I would have thought maybe you should learn from somewhere else. Tasting the Beis Hamikdash. Maybe you should learn it from the mitzvah to build the Beis Hamikdash. Tiny bring the price. There's a mitzvah to build the Beis Hamikdash. What's the makar? That's the makar. It's a mitzvah's asset to build the Beis Hamikdash. So you would think that the mitzvah of building Beis Hamikdash is even doicha Shabbos. It says Eshav Soisai Tishmoiru uMikdashai Tiro. Very similar pasuk. Ani Hashem. Same exact drasha. Kulchem Chayavim b'Choyli. The Torah put together Eshav Soisai Tishmoiru, the mitzvah of Shabbos, uMikdashai Tiro, the mitzvah of Mikdash, to tell me that if there's a face-off between the two, Ani Hashem, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to keep Shabbos. You're not supposed to build a Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara, it's going to be literally a repeat of the previous Gemara. My lab, but by the Messiah. It's like, I need a pasuk to tell me that Binyan Beis Hamikdash is not Doicha Shabbos. What kind of Binyan Beis Hamikdash? Probably you're building the Beis Hamikdash. You're being boina, you're being soiser al manas livnois. The time of the Kosav Rachmana, Shav Soisai Tishmeiro, and we needed a pasuk to tell me that it's not Doicha Shabbos. Hold on, without a pasuk, I would have thought Dachi. So what do you see from here? That without a pasuk, you would think that say of Asuli Mikdash v'Shachanti b'Soichem would be Doicha this Shabbos. I Asuli Mikdash v'Shachanti b'Soichem at the end of the day is only Naseh, and Shabbos is a loisa says sheyesh by Karas. So you see that I say is Doicha loisa says sheyesh by Karas. How do I see it? Because I need a drasha to tell me that it's not Doicha. The Gemara says lie. Maybe it's talking about where someone needed to do a lav de mechamer in order to build the Beis Hamikdash, and that's what you would have thought that would have been doicha, because the say of a asuli mikdash v'shechanti b'soichem could be doicha, the lav de mechamer, because that's a regular say doicha loisa say. So for that I need a pasuk. I don't need a pasuk for boina b'soiser, because that's a loisa say sheyesh by gars. But the Gemara says if that's the case, so at the end of the day, vash state in the pasuk that the say of asuli mikdash is not doicha lav de mechamer. We know I say doicha loisa say. Let's learn from here that it's not doicha. You'll tell me shani lav de Shabbos nechamiri. You tell me maybe the lav of Shabbos is more chomer. So just because I know I say is not doicha loisa say of Shabbos like lav de mechamer, that's not necessarily a proof that I say can never be doicha loisa say, because you see the Tana stelzu this halacha to different lav. He didn't make that pirch. He didn't ask this kasha that maybe there's a distinction between lav de Shabbos and other lav. The Tana brings the price of you would think that if your father tells you, if he tame. Father tells his son that's going to be metama. Or your father tells you don't return that. You would think you should listen to Tama. So you see clearly that we learn from the fact that that say of Kibud of aim is not doicha Shabbos, so too it's not doicha other lav. Why don't we say shani lav the Shabbos nechamir? You see, the Tanya didn't hold that way. So again, the of shach. What's this pasuk talking about? If it's talking about we're buying of a soiser, we need a pasuk to tell me that the mitzvah Beis Hamikdash is not doicha chol Shabbos. Oh, so that's a raya that I say is doicha loisa. I say sheyesh by cars. Elamai, you want to be doicha and you want to tell me it's talking about lav mechamer. It's talking about lav mechamer, and still the Torah says it's not doicha. So then we should prove from here that I say it's not doicha loisa. I say the Gemara says Elamai. Loilam it's talking about again. We learn the Gemara the way Rashi learns the Gemara, not the way Tosfos learns the Gemara. That loilam it's talking about we're boyin of a soiser. If that's the case, so that should be a raya that I say is doicha loisa say sheyesh by cars. And if that's the case, we solved our big problem in the sugya. Now we understand why you need a law. The Gemara says no, because mishum ikal mifrach malahanoch shekein hechsher mitzvah. That's a hechsher mitzvah, and because that's a hechsher mitzvah, it's over there that I say can be doicha the lois I say sheish by cars. Again, what does it mean hechsher mitzvah? Rashi explains that's the only way to do the mitzvah, and because that's the only way to do the mitzvah, so over there you're right. Enochanami, there would have been a havamina that I say should be doicha the lois I say sheish by cars, and that's why I need a pasuk. But that's not a tushtal to Yibum, because by Yibum you don't have to do the Yibum. By Yibum you could always do the chalitza. So the Gemara says mitzvah typically mehasam. Why do I need this drasha for? Right? Kishmaka kasha. We just learned two Gemaras. We went through the first one a little more thoroughly. The second one we went through a little bit more quickly because really it's in cheshbon. It's the same exact thing. But if you think about it, it's two drashas that are really saying the same thing. The first drasha was ish imay v'aviv tiro v'ashat soisai tishmeru ani Hashem alikecha. What does it teach me? That if your father and mother tell you to be Mechal Shabbos, you don't listen. Ani Hashem Lekecha. The second drasha was Es Shabsoisai Tishmoiru Umikdashai Tiro Ani Hashem. If there's a question of building the Beis Hamikdash or Shabbos, Ani Hashem Shabbos. In both cases, one case it's keep it over hey, the other one it's building the Beis Hamikdash. Same difference. And I say versus Shabbos, Ani Hashem, you're always supposed to do Shabbos. The Maskana, the Gemara said that both Brises and both Drashas are talking about where we're dealing with a real bona fide Chil Shabbos, and there would have been a Havamina that Tasei should be doicha the lois Tasei sheyesh by Karas, Kamash Milan, it's not. Oh, is that a raya that by Yibum Asay is doicha lois Tasei sheyesh by Karas? No, it's not a raya, because those are hechsha mitzvah. Over there, the mitzvah, that's the only way to do the mitzvah. Your father tells you Chal Shabbos, no other way to do it. You have to listen to him. You have to do what he asks you to do based on the mitzvah. Building the Beis Hamikdash, you have to build the Beis Hamikdash. Yibum, you can always do chalitza. There's always a way out. But the bottom line is, says, what do I need two drashas for? Meaning, hechshem mitzvah typically mehasam. Anything I know from the second drasha as shabsoisai tishmoiru mikdashai tiro, I know from the first drasha ish imay v'aviv tiro b'shabsoisai tishmoiru. Why do I need two? So the Gemara says a great answer. Enochinami, you're right. I don't need two. So if I don't need two, so why do I have to? The second drasha is a mistake. Second drush is really coming to teach me something else. What's it coming to teach me? A different price. You would think it says in the Torah, right? How do you touch the words? You should fear the Beis HaMikdash. You would think you should literally fear the Beis HaMikdash. So Rashi doesn't explain what this means, but the top Tosfos on Amud Beis says there would have been a Havamina that a person's supposed to worship the Beis HaMikdash. That's a very interesting Havamina. But there would have been such a Havamina. You should literally worship in the deity sense the Beis HaMikdash. Talmud Loimar, Eshab Soisai Tishmoiru, Ve'es Mikdashai Tiro, Nemer Shmira B'Shabbos, V'nemer Moira B'Mikdash. It says Shmira by Shabbos and it says Moira B'Mikdash, not Shmira B'Shabbos. When it says Shmira B'Shabbos, what do you mean Shabbos Atam Misyari? It doesn't mean Shabbos is some Getlechizach. Rather, Elohim Misha Hizer ala Shabbos. Keeping Shabbos is really fearing our Creator who commanded us to keep Shabbos. Af Moira Hamura b'Mikdash. So too, when it says Moira by the Mikdash, what do you mean Mikdash at the Misyari? It doesn't mean literally you should be worshiping the Beis HaMikdash. Elohim Misha Israel HaMikdash. Rather, it means you're supposed to fear and worship the one that commanded us the mitzvah of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so we're talking about having moira from the Beis HaMikdash. What does it even mean? Halachas that we know. Person's not going to Har Bayis holding his cane, his shoes, his money belt, and even with dirt on his feet. He's supposed to clean it off. Not supposed to make the Har Bayis into a shortcut. Certainly you're not allowed to spit. You would know all these things when there's a Beis HaMikdash. Meaning, there's a Beis HaMikdash once upon a time, you're going to go on the Har Bayis. How about when there's no Beis HaMikdash? What about then? Are all these halachas applicable? Talmud Loimar, Esheb Soisai Tishmoiru, Umikdashai Tiro. Yes, Mashmira Hamura B'Shabbos Lo'ilam. Just like the mitzvah of Shmira B'Shabbos is Lo'ilam, it's something that's forever and ever and ever. Moira Hamura B'Mikdash Lo'ilam, so too Moira B'Mikdash is true Lo'ilam, so that even if there's no Beis HaMikdash, but the Chayiv Moira of the Beis HaMikdash is something that's always going to apply. In other words, the pasuk that says the smichos between Shabbos and Mikdash is not coming to teach me any halachas in the world of Tchiyah. Whole different halach. It's coming to teach me that there's a connection between Moira Mikdash and Shmira Shabbos, which teaches me very fundamental laws in the world of Moira Mikdash. First of all, it defines what Moira Mikdash even means. What does it mean? You should literally worship the Beis HaMikdash? No, that's not what it means. It means Misha Hizer ala Mikdash. You're supposed to have Moira. You're supposed to have Yira from the one that commanded and said that you have to be careful from the Beis HaMikdash. That's the first thing. Second thing we learn is that just like Shabbos is forever, so to Moira Mikdash is something that's going to be forever as well. But returning to the big picture, and that is we still don't have a makar that asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares that would explain why we need a leo to tell me that the asay of Yibum is not doicha the Isurei Araya. Says the Gemara, continuing along, Elo, I would have thought, maybe we should learn it from the Lav in the Torah of Havar. So just a tiny introduction to this next part of the Gemara. It says in the Torah, a person is not allowed to light a fire on Shabbos. It's a pasuk in the Torah, the beginning of Parshas Vayakel, and the Tanam struggled to understand why this pasuk was ever written. And the reason is because the Lamites Malachas are not written anywhere in the Torah. We know the Lamites Malachas from the fact that the Torah juxtaposed Shabbos with Mishkan, and we learn from there that anything that was considered a Malacha Chashuv in the Mishkan is also considered a Malacha on Shabbos. But the Torah never went through all the different Malachas. You can go through the Torah from one side to the other. There's no mention of Bayer anywhere. Right? You have no mention of all the different Lamites Malachas. Yet the Torah singled out one. And the question is why? And it was a big machlokes Tana. Rabbi Yossi said that the reason the Torah didn't mention the reason the Torah mentioned is because really Havara, the lav of lighting a fire, is different than all the other Lamites Malachas. All the Lamites Malachas, if someone does it b'mezid with Edom and Asra, he's chayiv misas bezdin. If he does it b'mezid without Edom or Asra, he's chayiv kares. If he does it b'shoigig, he's chayiv chatas. Meaning, it's lois aseh sheyesh by kares, as opposed to lois avarosh b'chol moish v'seichem b'yom Shabbos. That's an ordinary lav. So the reason the Torah singled it out is l'lav yatzis. Rav Nassim said a different reason. He said l'chalik yatzis. The reason the Torah singled it out is because the Torah wanted us to know that even though all Lamites Malachas are really lumped together as one, It sounds like one lav and a whole bunch of different seifei katan. But really, in the world of lavin, we look at each one of the lamites malachis as an independent lav. L'may nafkamina, it's the karbanos chatas with halamois, sugis and perakal gadol, masach Shabbos. But that was very much sugis and seder moed. But the point is, machlokes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Nasa. Why the Torah singled out like according to Rabbi Yossi, it was lalav. To tell me it's different, all it is an ordinary lav. According to Rabbi Nasa, it's lachalik, it's regular chil Shabbos with misas bezin and karas and chatas. But it's lachal. It's just for us to understand that each one of the lavi Shabbos are really separate. So with that introduction, so you want to know why I need allowed to tell me that Yibum is not doicha the Yisur rights, because I would have thought that an asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares. I would have learned it from Havar. The Tanakh of Rabbi Shmuel, the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, they taught. It says lois sevar reich b'chol lois veiseichen. Mat Talmud loymar. Why did the Torah say this? Says the Gemara. Mat Talmud loymar. Right, Belashim Bitmiya, you're not sure? This is Seder Moed 101. Either Rabbi Yossi Lulav, either Rabbi Nosson Lechalik, like we just explained. Time to go into the price. Havar Lulav Yossi to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says the reason the Torah singled out Lois of Arish B'chol Moshe V'seichel Yom Shabbos is to teach us that it's not like Chil Shabbos, but rather all it is a lot. Rabbi Nosson said Lechalik. No, it's coming to teach us Lechalik. But my Rav explained. What did Tanit Rabbi Shmuel mean when they said that? Why did the Torah say Lois of Arish B'chol Moshe V'seichel? The Tana Moshav is Kakashli. In Rabbi Shmuel's yeshiva, they were telling us something else. They knew the machlok is Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Nosson. Rather, what they weren't understanding was why the Torah wrote the word Moshvei Seichem. Like Sevaru Esh, Bechol Moshvei Seichem b'Yom HaShabbos. What was the kash? Mech, what was it? Shabbos Chayvas Agofi. Shabbos is a Chayvas Agof. It's a Chayvas Gavra. A person has to keep Shabbos wherever he is. You have to do it wherever you are. It's my Shabbos, the Kasser Rachman of Shabbos Lamali. So why did the Torah say my Shabbos? Meaning, Moshvei Seichem means wherever you're living, it doesn't matter where in the world you are. You have a Havamina not that way? What, there would have been a Havamina that the only time you keep Shabbos is if you're on the East Coast, but if you're on, like, what's the Chiddush exactly? If it's a Chivas Oretz, Chivas Karka, oh, you would have thought maybe it's only in Eretz Yisrael, we have Kedushas Oretz, but being that it's a Chivas Aguf, what's the Chiddush? What would be the Havamina that it's something that should be Negeya everywhere? So that was what Tanit Rabbi Shmuel was discussing. And says the Gemara, Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amar Talmud. So it was a Talmud that said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel. I'll tell you. Because the Fisher it says in the passage, the Chayiv, the Ish, Chet, Mishpat, Maves, Behumas. If someone's going to be Chayiv Misas Bezdin, Bezdin has a mitzvah Behumas. Bezdin has a mitzvah to give this person Misas Bezdin. So Shemei, I would think, Bein B'chav and the Shabbos, that this is true on Chaz, true on Shabbos. I mean, if someone's Chayiv Misas Bezdin, so if it's Tuesday, Bezdin will give him Misas Bezdin. And if it's Shabbos, Bezdin will also give him Misas Bezdin. Ayumani Mekan B'chalel Meisumas. L'churum, Bezdin administers Misas Bezdin, they're being Mechal Shabbos, and it says Mechalel Moisumos. So how could Bezdin give Misas Bezdin on Shabbos? They themselves are not going to be Chayiv Misas Bezdin because they themselves are being Mechayiv. They're being Mechal Shabbos. No, B'Sham Melachos Chutz Misas Bezdin. Maybe that's referring to a person that's Mechal Shabbos, but not through administering Misas Bezdin. Because if you administer Misas Bezdin, you're kind of mitzvah b'humas, and if you're kind of mitzvah b'humas, so over there is Shabbos. Continuing along, maybe no. Maybe when it says b'chalel meisumas, it means even misas bezin. Umani mekayim b'humas. So what does that b'humas mean? It says in the Torah, bezin is supposed to kill if they have to. B'chalav b'Shabbos. It means dafka during the week. Or maybe it means even b'Shabbos. What's that next oyenoi? We're going to have to wait until tomorrow's stuff to see. Talmud loymer loisevaru eish b'chol moish v'seichem. So it says loisevaru eish b'chol moish v'seichem. Ulahalon loymer, and it says v'hoyu elo lochem lechukas mishpat l'doyroi seichem b'chol moish v'seichem. There's another pasuk that says the word moish v'seichem. Not moish shavas avul lahalon b'bezdin. Just like that, moish v'seichem is referring to Bezdin. Look up that pasuk; it's talking about Bezdin. Af moish shavos ha'amurim kan loisevaru eish b'chol moish v'seichem l'yom ha'Shabbos. The Bezdin is referring to Bezdin. V'amar achmona, and it says in the Torah loisevaru. So the Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel, they were bothered why it said in the Torah loisevaru ish b'chol moish v'seichem. It sounds like there's a chiddush that the lav of loisevaru is nogeya It doesn't matter where you are. Of course, it's Shabbos. So Shabbos, of course, is everywhere. Wherever a person travels, Shabbos comes along with him. So what's the Havamina that Shabbos is only in certain places that the Torah would have to say B'chol Moshvei Seichem? The Maskana, the Gemara says, you know what the Chiddush of Moshvei Seichem is? Bezdin. That's the Chiddush. That even Bezdin is bound by Leisav Arosh B'chol Moshvei Seichem B'yem HaShabbos. Why is that a Chiddush? Because Bezdin has a mitzvah to kill. V'humas. So you would have thought that even though when Bezdin kills, they're being L'chal Shabbos, but maybe V'humas, key word, is Doicha Shabbos, Kamash Malon, that it's not, and that's why we have Moshvei Seichem. So you can see how this is going to fit into our sugya. So the Gemara, my love Rav Nosson, Idam L'chalik Yatzasa. This Bryce of Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, we don't know if in that yeshiva they paskin like Rav Nosson who holds Havara L'chalik Yatzas, or if they paskin like Rav Nosson Havara L'lav Yatzas. Oh, but my love, it's fair to assume that they held like Rav Nosson, that Havara is L'chalik Yatzas. And if Havara is L'chalik Yatzas, we have a kasha, the time because of Bachman L'Leisavar. The only reason we know that Bezdin's V'humas is not Doicha, the Leisevaru, Eish B'chol Moshvei Seichem, is because the Torah wrote the word Moshvei Seichem. But had the Torah not written B'chol Moshvei Seichem, you would have thought that it would have been Doicha. It's an assay. And this is a lois asay sheyesh by kares. Oh, it's a raya that asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares. The Gemara says maybe this is the makar that asay is doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares, and this explains why we have to come out to 11. The Gemara says lie. You only have a raya if you assume that the Ton of Rabbi Shmuel held like Rav Nosson that Avar is the Chalik Yotzes. But lo'ilam, I'll tell you, Rabbi Yossi, that maybe they held like Rabbi Yossi that Avar is the Lav Yotzes, and if they hold Avar is the Lav Yotzes, all it is an ordinary lois asay. That's why you would have thought that the asay of Humas is doicha, the ordinary lois asay of that's why I need a pasuk of Moshvei Seichem, but this has nothing to do with the sugi in Yevamos of asay being doicha lois asay sheyesh by kars. The Gemara says no, but the Havanami Rabbi Yossi is all zayin. It's Rabbi Yossi. Let's say, Rabbi Yossi Avar the Lav Yotzes, Avar greatest. So when did Rabbi Yossi say that Avar is the Lav Yotzes? That's ordinary Avar. I mean, if somebody lights a fire on Shabbos, that's what the Gemara refers to as a Havara Gredisa, regular fire. So over there, Enochinami, all it is a lois asay according to Rabbi Yossi. Havara the Bezdin. If we're talking about Bezdin killing someone and doing Havara, there's only one thing that could mean, and that Havara is Chil Shabbos. Not because it's Havara, but because it's Bishul. Bishul Psilo. They're cooking lead. Rav Sheshes said, Mali Bishul Psila, Mali Bishul Samanim. That the Isser Shabbos of Bishul is true. If someone cooks Samanim, he cooks different herbs and dyes. That's the Bishul that was done in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Mishkan. Or if he cooks lead, it doesn't matter what the cooking is. Either way, it's going to be considered cooked. What does this mean? Which one of the Mises Bezdin involved lighting a fire? It wasn't Skila. It wasn't Chenek. It wasn't Chayiv, right? Skila was they threw someone off a rooftop, then they stoned them. There's no Havara, Chenek. It wasn't Chayiv. What is it? Sreifa. That's what it is. It's Sreifa. How did they do Sreifa? They would light a fire, they would put lead on fire, and the person would swallow it, and that's how the person would end up dying. So that's the Havara clearly that we're talking about. That Havara is actually also Bishul, because lighting the lead on fire is considered a Ma'aser Bishul Halacha. Mechatesi, Rav Sheshes said that. Rav Sheshes said, Mali Bishul Psila, Mali Bishul Sama. So he said that would be considered Bishul. So Aliba the Kule Alma, the Loisavaru Eish, B'chol Moshvei Seichem of Bezdin, is Zichar of Chil Shabbos. And still, you see that you need a pasuk of B'chol Moshvei Seichem to teach me that it's the Asay of a Humas, the Asay of Bezdin administering Misas Bezdin is not Doicha, the lot of Shabbos. So you say, Meres, without a pasuk, you would have thought it is doicha. So I say, Meres, I say is really doicha, lois asay, sheyesh by kares. So if that's the case, what we're going to end today's daf is that maybe we found it. Maybe this is the makar. Maybe we understand why we need Oleh. Maybe it's true. I say is doicha lois asay. I know that from Klein Betzitzis, but maybe I say is also doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares. Where do I see that? I see that from the fact that we need a word moishvei seichem to teach me that the asay of Behumas is not doicha the lois asay of Shabbos, which is yesh by kares because of Bishul Samar. The Gemara is going to be doicha this, and then the Gemara is going to wrap up this whole sugya on Daf Zayin and Gemara's Daf. We're going to stop here a little bit prematurely, and we're going to speak out a little bit of Reid. So the topic of the daf, and really the topic of the last three dafin, has been the sugya of asay doicha loisas. Now, why are we talking about asay doicha loisas? So just to recap for the fifth time, it's because we're discussing the first halacha of the Masechta, which states that there's no mitzvah's Yibum, b'makom erva, meaning if an erva falls the Yibum, there's no mitzvah of Yibum. And the Gemara brought a brisa that states the makar to this halacha. It's because it says aleh by the mitzvah of Yibum, Yevamos yavay aleh, and it says aleh by the erva of Achesisha to teach me that even b'makom Yevamos yavay aleh, still there's going to be an Isser Achesisha, so that if an erva falls the Yibum, there is no mitzvah of Yibum. And the Gemara was bothered with a very, very existential question, and that is time of the Kasab Rachman aleh. The only reason we're saying there's no mitzvah's Yibum by an erva is because I have a drasha. Halav hachi. However, had I not had a drasha, I would have thought that there is a mitzvah of Yibum. Why? L'chayra Yibum at the end of the day is only an aseh. And the Isuri Arayas are all loisaseh sheyesh by kares. Ve'en aseh doicha loisaseh sheyesh by kares. And that's the sugya trying to maybe find the makar that really aseh is doicha loisaseh sheyesh by kares. And if we could do that, then we would understand why we need allowed to tell me that the aseh of Yibum is not doicha the loisaseh of Arayas. But one thing is clear in the Gemara. This is the backdrop of the whole sugya. That if aseh would be doicha loisaseh sheyesh by kares, then everything would be great. That would be beautiful. We wouldn't have Daf Dalet Hey Vav and Zayin Masechtas Yevamos. It would be pashut. We would understand the price on Daf Gimel Amud Beis. We would know why we need allowed to tell me that if an erva falls Yibum, there's no mitzvahs. That there's no mitzvahs Yibum, because without a pasuk, you would have said Aseh Deicha Lois Aseh. You would say the Aseh of Yibum is Deicha the Lois Aseh of Achesisha and all the arais. The problem is that Aseh is Deicha Lois Aseh, but it's not Deicha Lois Aseh sheyesh by kares. But halav hachi. If aseh would be doicha lois aseh sheyesh by kares, it would be pashut that the aseh of Yibum would be doicha in svara, the lois aseh of the arayas, and it would explain why we needed drashas. In other words, b'milam acherim, it's mavur in the Gemara that just like in kol ha'torah kula, aseh is doicha lois aseh, the aseh of Yibum is also doicha lois aseh. It's just that Yibum by Arayas is a lois aseh sheyesh by kares, and that's why the Gemara doesn't want that aseh to be doicha, the lois aseh. But be'etzem, the aseh of Yibum is no different than any other aseh, and just like asehs are all doicha lois asehs, so too in svara the aseh of Yibum should be doicha lois aseh as well. Azay is mavur klar from every single line in the sugya that we're learning right now. The truth is, it's even a more mafurish sugya later in the Masechta on Daf Chav. So Daf Chav is one of the daf in the Masechtas Yevamos that needs an asterisk in terms of prominence, in terms of a lot of Yesodis and Lumdis in the entire Masechtas Yevamos. A lot of yeshivas, when you learn Masechtas Yevamos, you start Daf Beis in the morning, and second Seder very often they'll start Daf Chav, because Daf Chav is very much where a lot of the Lumdis in Masechtas Yevamos is at. The Mishnah on Daf Chav says that there are certain times where if Yevamos falls the Yibum, the halacha is you have to do chalitza, you can't do Yibum. And the Mishnah gives examples of it. One of the examples is a grusha that falls liyibum to a kohen. Meaning, this is a woman that was once divorced. Now she was married, her husband died, no children, husband has a brother. Ordinarily, there'd be a mitzvah of yibum. But in the event that the brother is a kohen, being that she's a grusha, so the halacha is there's no mitzvah of yibum, rather they have to do chalitza. The Gemara asks that, I don't understand. Why do you have to do chalitza? What's the problem? Why can't they do Yibum? The Gemara says, what do you mean? She's a grusha. A kohen's not allowed to marry a grusha. Zok the Gemara, that's true. Ordinarily, a kohen's not allowed to marry a grusha. But this marriage isn't an ordinary marriage. This marriage is a mitzvah aseh de'oraisa of Yevamos yavay aleh. This is a mitzvah aseh of Yibum. So, afraid the Gemara, let the aseh of Yibum be doicha the lois aseh of a grusha l'kohen hedyot. Now, the lois aseh of grusha l'kohen hedyot is a regular lois aseh. It's not a lois aseh sheyesh by kares. Al zen nemar aseh doicha lois aseh. So, afraid the Gemara, why is a grusha l'kohen hedyot chayletzes for lois Yevamos? Why don't you say the aseh of Yibum is doicha the lois aseh of grusha l'kohen hedyot? And the Gemara says, good kasha. The teretz is a derabanan gzeira bia rishoina atu bia shnia. Because Chazal were afraid that although it's true that the bia rishoina by every Yibum is a mitzvah, but the bia shnia is already not a mitzvah. So it's true. A bia rishoina would be okay. Because the say of Yibum, of the Bia Rishon, would be Deicha the Lois, say of Grusha the Kainedit. The problem is that's only going to help for the Bia Rishon. It's not going to help for the Bia Shneah. Because we're afraid that if there'd be a Bia Rishon, inevitably there would be a Bia Shneah, and therefore the Bia Shneah already, you would have the law without the Asay, and for that reason, the Allah is let's explain this Yevamos. But it's a Mefurish Gemara. It's Mefurish that we say Asay Deicha Lois Asay when it comes to Yibum, just like we say Asay Deicha Lois Asay by all our rayos. In fact, the Gemara held that it's pashut that if a grusha falls the kohen head, it's just an example of an Asay Deicha Lois Asay by Yibum. The Asay of Yibum for sure should be Deicha the Lois Asay of grusha. Not of us. It's just because of Gzeira Bia Rishonu Atu Bia Shneah that's not the halacha. But ordinarily we would say Asay Deicha Lois Asay. In other words, just like in Kol HaTorah Kula, Asay is Deicha Lois Asay, it's before in the Gemara that the Asay of Yibum is no different. And that the Asay of Yibum has the same exact ability and capacity to be Deicha Lois Asay. Where do you see it? You see it in our Sugyo, Daf Amud Beis, and Daf Dalet, and Daf Hey, and Daf Vav, and Daf Zayin, and Masechtas Yevamos. Because the Gemara is struggling to understand why we need Allah to tell me that the Asay of Yibum is not Deicha, the Isuri Arayas. But it's only because the Asay of Yibum is an Asay, and the Isur Arayas is a Lois Asay Sheyesh by Karas. The Ein Asay Deicha Lois Asay Sheyesh by Karas. But if it would be an ordinary Lois Asay, or if Asay would be Deicha Lois Asay Sheyesh by Karas, then the Gemara would understand why you need Allah. So you see that there's a Chiyur when it comes to the Asay of Yibum, and it's even more Mefurish on Daf Chaf, because on Daf Chaf you see clearly the Gemara says Chayiv Laden Chayletz is Flamis Yevamos. Speak the Gemara why say Asay Deicha Lois Asay, and the Gemara to come on to a Rabbanon of Gzeira Bia Rishon ought to be a Shneah. But without the Gzeira of Chazal, you would say Asay Deicha Lois Asay. Why? Because Asay of Yibum is an Asay. And Asay always has the ability to be Deicha Lois Asay. So why are we making such a big deal about this? Like, why would you think otherwise? Go through all the sugis in Shas. Asay is always Deicha Lois Asay. The Asay at Tzitzis is Deicha, the Lois Asay of Shatan is. And in our sugya, we were talking about the Asay of Mila being Deicha, and the Asay of Pesach being Deicha, and the Asay of Tamid being Deicha, and the Asay of Ishki of Tiro being Deicha, and the Asay of the Asuli Mikdash Fishachanti, the Seicham being Deicha, and the Asay of a Humas, that Bezdin has a mitzvah to administer Misas Bezdin. All these different Asays are Deicha. So why is it such a big deal? Why are we making such a fuss about the fact that the Asay of Yibum, you see from the sugyas, has the ability to be Deicha Lois Asay? So the truth is, it's a very, very big kiddush, and it requires a little bit of an introduction. That is, there's a Gemara that is a Gemara that we've talked about many times, Be'ez Hashem over the years. It's a Gemara that combines and fuses Lumdis and Machshava. It's an absolute classic. It's a Gemara Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis of Masechtas Yoma. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Gedolei tshuva shedoiches lois asay shebetayim." Rabbi Yochanan said, "Tshuva is such a gewaldige mitzvah that tshuva is doicha lois asay shebetayim." How do I know that? Shenemar, because the pasuk says in Yirmiyahu, "Leimar hein yishalach ishes ishtay v'holcha mi'itay v'hoysa l'shach." If a man would divorce his wife, and then his wife would go and marry somebody else, hayoshoif elehoi. Can this man go ahead and remarry this woman? So a man divorces his wife goes, she's single now, she marries somebody else. Then her second husband divorces her or dies. Can the original husband go and remarry her? Of course not. That would be the worst thing you can do. It's allowed in the Torah. It's machzeh grushasai. Yet, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, va'at zonis reim rab. Klal Yisrael, you were mizan. You sinned. And I divorced you. And you went ahead and you found other gods. And you found other taivas. And you married them. Yet, if you do tshuva, the shaif elai no masha, I'm willing to take you back. Said Rabbi Yochanan, you see from here, that when a yid sins, HaKadosh Baruch Hu divorces him. And when the yid sins and finds something else to occupy himself with, he's like the divorced woman that married somebody else. Yet when he does tshuva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm willing to take you back. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is machzeh grushasai. Fake Rabbi Yochanan, how could HaKadosh Baruch Hu be machzeh grushasai? It's allowed in the Torah. You're not allowed to be machzeh grushasai. So how could HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself be machzeh grushasai? The teretz must be gedoyle tshuva. Shedoiches lois asay shebetayra. Because when Klal Yisrael does tshuva, the tshuva of Klal Yisrael is doiche the lois asay shebetayra. As I Zok Rabbi Yochanan in Masechtas Yoma Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis. The Kappas Tamarim, one of the Kadmonim, he wrote a sefer from Masechtas Yoma. It's called Tosfos Yom HaKippurim. And in his Tosfos Yom HaKippurim, he brings Makshim Oilam. He says the Welt asks. So this is already in the 1600s saying that the Welt asks. Right? Maksham Oilam is a modern sprach. But this is already hundreds of years ago, the Welt was tumbling with this kasha. This is Rabbi Yochanan said, as if there's some chiddush in the mitzvah of tshuva, that tshuva can be doicha, lois asay shabbatayra. Right, the Welt, every assay is doicha, lois asay shabbatayra. It's the sugya we're learning right now. We're learning the sugya of assay, doicha, lois asay. Machzeh gushasay is a lois asay. Tshuva is an assay, so of course tshuva is doicha lois asay shabbatayra. Every assay is doicha lois asay shabbatayra. So where did Rabbi Yochanan see that gedola tshuva should doicha lois asay shabbatayra? Gedola tshuva sounds like there's something very unique and very special about tshuva. That tshuva is doicha lois asay shabbatayra. So Dr. Tosi Yomi Kippur the Balkapas tomorrow, Makshema Oilam, my ume the tshuva, valikachi amida, the asi assay, v'dachi lois asay. So the Kappas tomorrow brings from the Sefer Keser Nifchar, obviously a Kadmoi, that the Keser Nifchar said a gewaldige teretz. He said it's true, assay is doicha lois asay. But every assay that's doicha lois asay is when the person that's doing the lois asay is also being mekayim the same. So Ruvain wants to put on a beged. This beged has shatnez. There's also tzitzis on the beged. He's going to put the beged on. He'll violate the lois asay in the Torah of lois silver shatnez. But at the same time, he's also being mekayim a mitzvah asay of gidul and tasalach. So his mitzvah that he's doing right now is going to be doicha his lois asay that he's doing right now of lois silver shatnez. But what would be if Ruvain's going to do a lois asay, and at that very same time, Shimon's going to be mekayim an asay? I say doicha lois asay? Of course not. You need the person that's doing the lois asay to also be mekayim the asay. What was the lois asay of tshuva? It's the lois asay of Machzeh Gushasai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu divorced Klal Yisrael, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes Klal Yisrael back. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's being Machzeh Gushasai. Who's being mekayim the mitzvah of tshuva? It's Klal Yisrael's being mekayim the mitzvah of tshuva. Zok Rav Yochanan, mitzat gdorim asay doicha lois asay. You can't have a situation where one person does a lot and another person doesn't asay, and that you're going to say asay doicha lois asay. Muzayin, tshuva is different. That by tshuva, it's not only if the same person that's doing the lois asay is doing the asay, do we say asay doicha lois asay? But as long as one person's doing tshuva, even another person can be over a lois asay. Das is a chiddush in tshuva, and that's what Rabbi Yochanan meant when he said gedola tshuva shedoicha lois asay shabbatar. So this is the beautiful teretz that the Baal Kappas tomorrow brings in his Tosis Yom Kippurim in Yuma Peivav Amud Beis in the name of the Kesef Nifchar to answer this Maksham Oilam, this Velt's Kasha of what was Rabbi Yochanan's gedola tshuva shedoicha lois asay shabbatar. Every mitzvah say is doicha lois asay shabbatar. But the Kappas tomorrow asks two kashas on the Kesef Nifchar. We'll mention the second, and that is that true? You're telling me that every single asay doicha lois asay is the pshat, that the person that's doing the lois asay is also being mekayim asay? So that's not true. He said because one of the most prominent sugyas, if not the most prominent sugya of asay doicha lois asay in Shas, is the case of Yibum. And it's mavur that the asay of Yevamos Yavayaleh, the asay of Yibum is doicha where do you see it? You see it from that Gimel Daled Hey Vav and Zayin Mesachtas Yevamos that if I say would be doicha lois asay sheyesh by karas, we would understand why you need all that. And you see it again on Daf Chav, where the Gemara says Chayiv Lavin Chayiv V'loy Misya Bemes. Why? Only because of the Gzeira be Rishona to be Yishniya. But mitzad the Gdor asay doicha lois asay, you would say asay doicha lois asay by Yibum, just like you would say asay doicha lois asay by all mitzvahs asay. Afraid the Kappas tomorrow. If that's the case, I have a problem. You know what the problem is? He says, who's mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum? Every Yibum, who gets the mitzvah? It says in the Torah, Yevamos Yavayaleh. Who has the mitzvah of Yevamos Yavayaleh? It's not the Kappas tomorrow. It's Pasha. It's the man's mitzvah. Yevamos Yavayaleh is talking to the man. It's talking to the Yavam. The Yavam has a mitzvah to go ahead and do Yibum. If you have a chayve lavin, or if you have a lav sheyesh by karas, between a man and a woman, if they engage in this bia that they weren't allowed to engage in, who's over the lois asay? They're both over the lois asay. It's a Gemara. Ironically, Masechtas Yevamos, Dapei Daled Amud Beis. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. V'chein Taned ve Rabbi Shmuel. Ish oy isha ki yasu mikol chatois ha'adam. Kishva ha'kasuv. Isha le'ish l'chol oinshim shebetorah. All loving men and women are the same. So if the man gets an avera, the woman gets an avera. If the woman gets an avera, the man gets an avera. It's not the Kappas tomorrow. So if that's the case, how could you say I say doicha lois asay by Yibum? L'chayra, very good. The man he has an assay of Yibum to be doicha in his chayv lava or his lav sheyesh by kares. Oh, but the woman doesn't have the mitzvah. All she has is the lav. So she has the lav without the mitzvah. How's she going to have the tchiyah? And yet it's clear in Yevamos that Yevama Yava Yolea is doicha loisaseh. What do you see from there? That you don't need that the same person that's doing the lav should be mekayim daseh. And as long as there's a kiyum maseh happening in this ma'isa, even if it's not the same person that's doing the lav that's being mekayim daseh, that would be enough to say aseh doicha loisaseh. So Dr. Kappas tomorrow and Achashtenish the Kesef Nivchar. It's beautiful. But it's not true. It's not oisgehalten. Because you see that every assay can be doicha lois assay shebetayra, even if you don't have that the same person that's doing the lois assay is being makayim daseh. Where do you see it from Yevamos? Because in Yevamos we say assay doicha lois assay, and it's true both for the man and for the woman. And Bishlam, the man, he has an assay to be doicha his lois assay, but she doesn't have an assay to be doicha her lois assay. And Apol can you see that there's a sugi of assay doicha lois assay? It's muchach that for assay doicha lois assay you don't need the same person doing the lav to be mekayim daseh. If that's the case, it's arop the case of nich kasha, and it's hot kushu l'duchte. What was Rabbi Yechon and Schidish that gedayla chubish doicha lois assay shebetayra? The every assay is doicha lois assay shebetayra. Reb Kiva Eger wrote Hagois on the Kappas tomorrow. And he wrote Hagois on the Sefer Tois Yom Kippurim as well. So just to have an idea of who the Kappas tomorrow was, we all know who Reb Kiva Eger's was. We know less about the Kappas tomorrow, but Reb Kiva Eger wrote Hagois on the Kappas tomorrow Svarim. So that tells you everything you have to know. And Reb Kiva Eger's Hagois on the Tois Yom Kippurim, he has one comment on this Gemara. And in his comment, he says that the Tois Yom Kippurim asked the Bomba Kash on the Kesef Nivcha. But he made one hanacha that I'm not sure where he got. He said that by every Yibum, it's only the Yavam that gets a mitzvah, but the Yavam is not Mekayim a mitzvah. I don't know how he knew that. How did he know in Svara that Yavam Yava Yaleh is only the Yavam's mitzvah and that it's not the Yavam's mitzvah? Maybe just like the Yavam's Mekayim a mitzvah, the Yavam is also Mekayim a mitzvah. And he says, Ube'emes, Kvega talking, Kemot Sasi b'Sefer Pnei Yeshua, on Masechtes Ksubas Daf Men. That Hoich Dvarif, you can look it up. It's there in the middle of a shtickle. The Pnei Yeshua says it's poshut that the mitzvah saseh of Yibum is not only the man's mitzvah, but it's the woman's mitzvah as well. So if that's the case, said Reb Kivegas before she the Pnei Yeshua. So he says that you never say aseh doicha lois aseh if the person that's doing the lois aseh is not being mekayim daseh, and that's the chiddush of Gedolei Tshuva because Hakadosh Baruch Hu doing the machzor rishasai, and Klal Yisrael is the one that's doing tshuva. You have a kasha from Yibum. Yibum, the woman is being mekayim a mitzvah, just like the man is being mekayim a mitzvah. As I said, Reb Kiva Eger, this was his comment on the Kappas tomorrow in Tois Yom Kippurim in Masechtes Yuma Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis. In other words, we seem to have a machlokes achronim. The Kappas tomorrow on the one hand, Reb Kiva Eger and the Pnei Yeshua on the other hand, whether the mitzvah of Yevamos Yava Yoleh is only the man's mitzvah or whether it's the woman's mitzvah as well. So the truth is, let's think about this a second. Pashut. Without looking in Svar, if someone would ask you, the mitzvah of Yibum, is it the man's mitzvah or is it also the woman's mitzvah? So just a few thoughts that come to mind immediately. Number one, Yibum is a mitzvah say she'ein azman garam. Mitzvah say she'azman garam and Hashem apturais. But Yibum is a mitzvah say has nothing to do with man. It's a mitzvah say she'ein azman garam. So if it's a mitzvah say she'ein azman garam, so based on that, you would think that women are chayiv. You can argue that maybe the mitzvah of Yibum is a sif katan in the mitzvah of pruvu. And pruvu, women are potter from. So maybe you can make the argument that women should be potter from the mitzvah of Yibum as well. Now, Yibum is a certain type of pruvu, the Ramban and Parshas Vayeshev, but that's already ein lanu esek b'nestaris. Maybe we're being Dorish time of the Korah already, but for sure it's an ishus mitzvah. And if that's the case, and maybe it has a shaychus to pruvu, and if we have a din kloli, that women are potter from Puruvu, so maybe that would make sense that women should be potter from Yibum. But then you could start tying that Yechim and Broike, he's the Tan and Chas that holds women are chayiv in Puruvu. So based on that, maybe you could argue we would be chayiv in mitzvahs Yibum as well. So should be telling the Machoikas of Yechim and Broike and the Chachonim? I hear. But the truth is, it's even more poshut, because look at the pasuk. What does the pasuk say? Yevama Yava Yaleh. The pasuk's talking to the Yavam. So if the pasuk's talking to the Yavam, it sounds for sure like it's the Yavam's mitzvah. And the emes is, if you look in the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchas Yibum v'Chalitza, the Rambam says, mitzvahs hasei min ha-Torah, sheyiyabim odom eshes achiv me'aviv. Beimin ha-Nesuin, beimin ha-Eresin, ameis b'loi zera, shenemar, uvein lo yavama yava yoleh. The Rambam sounds like he's talking to the man. Mitzvahs hasei min ha-Torah, sheyiyabim odom, that's the man, eshes achiv me'aviv, his brother's wife. It sounds for sure like we're talking to the man. And if you want to take it even a step further, the Minchas Chinuch So we know at the end of every single mitzvah, not the mitzvah chinuch, the chinuch himself, so he discusses some of the very, very fine pratim of the mitzvah. Is it negay men, women, bezman hazeh, bezman habayis? So at the end of mitzvah's Yibum says the chinuch, quote, v'noi heges mitzvah zu bechol makayim ubechol zman bischarim. What does it mean bischarim? It's a man's mitzvah. It's not a woman's mitzvah. How did we know that? It's pashut because it says in the Torah Yevamos Yavayoleh, and that's for sure where the Kappas tomorrow was coming from. Pashut reading the pasuk. It's not mitzvah say has mangaro, ain't has mangaro. It's pashut. The Torah said Yevamos Yavayoleh. Torah is talking to the Yavim. Torah set up a case, a situation, a Maisa Mitzvah, something happened, and now we have to know what to do. The Torah says, Yavim, go ahead and do a Maisa B'il, a mitzvah. Torah didn't say anything about the Yavim having a mitzvah. It's mashma that way in the Rambam, it's Mefurish in the Chinuch. So the emes is, Rabbi Kiva, time is on the Kappas tomorrow. It's the man's mitzvah, maybe it's the woman's mitzvah. The Chema Tzasi, the Pnei Yeshua, Ksubas Tavnem Amud Aleph. I think Muscho Rishon, Al Rabbi Kiva, Pnei Yeshua, Lahavi Arayu, to explain what's the basis to say that this would be a woman's mitzvah and not really a man's mitzvah. But the emes is, could be there's a more pashut teretz, but it's mefurish in the haflah. The haflah, Rabbi Shalach Sam Sofer, in Mesechtes Ksubas, Daf Chav Daled Amud Beis. This is the middle of a shtickle. We once spoke out the shtickle for a different reason, but the haflah has a very, very big yesod. The haflah over there is talking about the mitzvah Birchas Kayanim. So there's a mitzvah that the Kayan has, Kaisavarchu es b'nei Yisrael, Amor Lahem, Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha. It's the Kayanim's mitzvah, right? So if somebody asks you, Birchas Kayanim, it's a mitzvah in the Torah. Whose mitzvah is it? Of course, it's Pasha. It's the Kayan's mitzvah. Zok the haflah. Nir lani is daiti Pashat. The Kamoi the Ika Asay l'Kayanim Mevarech es Yisrael. Just like there's a mitzvah Asay for a Kayan to be Mevarech es Yisrael, Hacha nami Ika mitzvah Asay l'Yisrael l'Hizbarech min HaKayanim. This mitzvah Asay for a Yisraelim, non-Kayanim, to get gebenched from Kayanim. Just like there's a mitzvah, it says befurish in the Torah, Torah is talking to the Kayanim, there's no shayla who the Torah is talking about. But when the Torah told the Kayan, go ahead and be Mevarech es Yisrael, the Torah also told the Yisrael, make yourself available so that the Kayan could go ahead and bench you. Says the Afla, it's a big yisod. Very often the Torah will tell the Oisa to do something, but it's implied and it's understood that if the Oisa needs to come on to someone else to be able to do this mitzvah, that the Torah is not just talking to the Oisa, the Torah means you too. Because at the end of the day, the Oisa can't do it without you. It's always going to be on both. And he said, I'll give you one muscle. Like the Yavam, it says, the mitzvah's on her as well. I'll prove it to you. How could it be she's over on the list that she doesn't have the mitzvah? Come on, she goes to play to begin. Must be. It's mefurish, but that's latest. Then ironically, the Afla says, Shum matzasi mefurish b'sefer charedim. So not Charedim. That Charedim says Mefurish that the mitzvah Birchas Kayanim is not only on the Kayan, but it's also on the Mizbarach. About Kapanim is Mefurish in the Haflah. The Haflah said that the mitzvah Birchas Kayanim, even though the Torah is talking to the Kayan, the Torah also means the Yisrael, because if the Yisrael wouldn't make himself available to get the bracha, then it would be impossible for the Kayanim to be able to make the mitzvah. And what's his Rai? His Rai is Yevamos. Because you see by Yevamos, the mitzvah is on the Yevamos just like it's on the Yevamos. How do you know it's on the Yevamos? Rav Kivegas Taina, the Kasha of the maximum of the Kesef Nif, the Kasha of the Kappas tomorrow. Because you see that I say it's not Deichel Lois, I say, unless the person doing the Lois is Mekayim, I say, again, I say it's Deichel Lois, I say, when it comes to Yibum, Muzayin, that she also has the mitzvah. Where does she have the mitzvah? You're going to tell me because it's a mitzvah, I say, She'in as man garoma? The Torah says Yevamos Yavayoleh. The Torah is talking to the Yavamos, not talking to the Yevamos. Elamai, it's muchach that she has the mitzvah, but where does she have the mitzvah? So that was only a side, but that's the bottom line. The bottom line is that we have the Pnei Yeshua and Rab Kiva Eger and the Haflah, Gedoyle Achronim, who all said the same thing. They all said that even though in the Torah it says Yevamos Yavayoleh, and it would be mashma that it's only the Yavam's mitzvah, but really the Yevamos has the mitzvah as well. We also have the sheet of the Kappas Tamarim, where the Kappas Tamarim says, no, Yevamos Yavayoleh is only the Yavam's mitzvah. Yevamos Yavayoleh is not the Yevamos mitzvah. It's mefurish in the chinuch. Neiheges mitzvah zu b'scharim. Clearly, it's only the Yavam's mitzvah. It's not the Yevamos mitzvah. It's very mashma that way from the Rambam. Because the Rambam more as a poisik, halacha l'maisa, when he lays out the mitzvah, he says, mitzvah saseh, ava adam sheyiyabim esha zachin. It doesn't say anything about she having a mitzvah. So from the Rambam, and the Chinuch names on in Mitzvah Aleph, that the Rambam Shita is like the Chinuch, that it seems like the Rambam Shita is also that it's only the Yavam's mitzvah, it's not the Yevamos mitzvah. At the risk of taking this a little bit too far, I saw a tshuva from Yitzchak Khan Inspector, the Kovner of. He brings a half of the Geraya from the Cheshbon HaSugya that we've been learning over here in the Sugya of Asay Doicha Loisase to one of these two studies. And that is the Gemara in Daf Hey, when it was trying to prove whether Asay is Doicha Loisase or whether Asay, trying to find another Makar to Asay Doicha Loisase. So I brought a Makar from the fact that it says in the Torah, Upas Kanam Lo Yigalecha. It says Upas Kanam Lo Yigalecha, that a Kohen is not allowed to shave his beard. Yeah, a Kohen Mitzvah is supposed to cut all the hair on his body, even his beard. So you see that the Asay of Mitzvah is Doicha, the Lois Asay of Upaskanim Lo Yigalecha. So the Gemara attempted in the Cheshbon of the Gemaras that we're learning, like this is Kedai, that you see from here that Asay is Doicha Lois Asay. But the Gemara says no raya. Why? Because the Lois Asay of Upaskanim Lo Yigalecha is a lav she'ino shava b'koil. The reason it's a lav she'ino shava b'koil is because only men have the lav of upas kanim lo yigalecho, as opposed to women don't have it. So it's true, you have a makar from here that I say is doicha lav she'ino shava b'koil, but this wouldn't be a raya that an asay could be doicha even a lav that's shava b'koil. But one thing for sure, you see from here that from Zakanoi that an asay would be doicha a lav she'ino shava b'koil from the fact that the asay of Teglachas Mitzvah is doicha the lois nasei of a pas kanim lo yigalech. Says Tosfos, if that's the case, it should emerge a chiddush. What's the chiddush? A kohen has a lois nasei of a pas kanim lo yigalech, but at the same time, a kohen also has an asay of kedoshim yiyu to make sure that he observes all the mitzvahs of kehan. So Tosfos says it comes out that from zikana you see. Not only that an asay is doicha a lav shein neshava b'kol, which is obvious because asay is doicha every lois asay, but it's also doicha a lois asay v'asay shein neshava b'kol. Meaning, asay is doicha lois asay, but it's not doicha lois asay v'asay. Abazak Tosfos, from Skana we should learn that even though asay is not doicha lois asay v'asay, but a lois asay v'asay shein neshava b'kol, that an asay should be doicha. Abazak Tosfos, that's what should come out. Fake Tosfos, if that's the case, I have a few kashas. One of the kashas that Tosfos asks is from the Sugya Yevamos Tavchav. The Gemara over there is discussing what happens if an almana would fall a Yibum to a Kohen Gadol. An almana would fall a Yibum to a Kohen Gadol. So no Kohen's allowed to marry a grusha, but a Kohen's allowed to marry an almana. A Kohen Gadol had a special isser that he wasn't allowed to marry an almana. What would happen if almana falls to a Kohen Gadol? So the Gemara says, so the Gemara, why? It's Pasha. Because ein asay doicha lois asay v'asay. Asay of Yibum can't be doicha the Isra Almana l'Kohen Gadol. Because the Isra Almana l'Kohen Gadol is a lois asay. Kohen Gadol is not married Almana. It's also an asay because the Kohen Gadol has to marry B'sul. So it's a lois asay v'asay. The ein asay doicha lois asay v'asay. In other words, just to clarify the point, Gerusha l'Kohen Hedyet, the Gemara said, is chayletzes v'loim nisyabemes. Even though asay really is doicha lois asay, because of gzeira bir rishon ought to be a shniya. It's a din d'rabban. But on one of the Kohen Gadol's of the Gemara over there, the reason it's chayletzes flamis yabemes is not midrabban of gzeira bir rishon ought to be a shniya. There it's midairaisa because the asay of Yibum doesn't have the ability to be doicha the lois asay ve'asay of Amud Aleph Kohen Gadol. I don't understand. The Gemara says that asay of Yibum can't be doicha the lois asay ve'asay of Amud Aleph Kohen Gadol. Hafel v'fel. Amud Aleph Kohen Gadol is a lav she'en shava b'kol. Who has the Isser Almana? Only a Kohen Gadol. That says lav she'en shava b'kol as it gets. It's only negay. The Gemara said it's negay of men and not women. It's ein shava b'kol. This is where it's only negay of the Kohen Gadol. It's the only one that has this lav. This is his exclusive Isser. So it's a lav she'en shava b'kol. Why don't we say that from upas kanim lo yigalechu? You see that an asay is doicha lois asay v'asay she'en shava b'kol. And if that's the case, the asay of Yibum should be doicha the Almana l'Kohen Gadol. Mitzad asay being doicha lois asay v'asay she'enoi shava b'kol. Azoy frei Tosfos paskal lo yichalechol to lois asay k'toshim yiyu is an asay. And yet you see the Teglachas Mitzvah is doicha lois asay v'asay. The reason we don't tell that to the kol Torah kula is because the Gemara said it's a lav she'enoi shava b'kol. So you only have a raya that asay is doicha lois asay v'asay when it's enoi shava b'kol. Now we're shava b'kol. Okay, Tosfos says I'm no problem. I'll concede that point. But Hamiyah, where it's enoi shava b'kol, like Makar that I say is doicha. So says every Yibum should be doicha. Amud Aleph Kohen Gadol mitzad asay doicha lois asay v'asay because Amud Aleph Kohen Gadol all it is a lois asay v'asay. So what's up? The Gemara let's let me say abemis midairaisa by chayving lava we have come on to Xera be Rishon, not to be a Shnir. Oh, but by Chayiv Lav Ves, and it's Pashut why it's Chayletz is Levis Yevamos. Because they not say Doichel Lois say Basay. Why not? It's a Lav Shein Shavu Bakol, and by Lav Shein Shavu Bakol, let's say it should be Doichel Lois say Basay. We should learn now from Skon. Frank of Yitzchak Al-Chanon. He says, I don't understand. If Reb Kiva Eiger, if the Achroinim Agarech, that the only time that the mitzvah of Yibum is only Negeya the Yavam, and it's not Negeya the Yavama, the sheet of the Kappas Tamarim, and the sheet ostensibly of the Rambam, and for sure the sheet of the Chinuch, it's only the man's mitzvah, not the woman's mitzvah. So what's fake Tosus Akasha? You want to know why the assay of Yibum is not Doicha the Lois Assay V'Assay of Amud Aleph Gadol, Hagam Amud Aleph Gadol is a Lav Shein Shavu Bakol? I'll tell you why. Because the assay of Yibum is also in a Shavu Bakol. Because it's only the Geis Chorim, it's not the Kei and the Keis. And that's Poshut of Yitzchak Al-Chanon, that the whole Maila of Eino Shavu Bakol and Tchiyah is Avifel B'Asay is Shavu Bakol, and the Lav, or the Lois Asay V'Asay is Eino Shavu Bakol. So there we would say that even though ordinarily Asay is not Doichel Lois Asay V'Asay, but if the Asay is Shavu Bakol and the Lois Asay V'Asay is Eino Shavu Bakol, over there would be able to be Doichel. But what if the Asay is Eino Shavu Bakol, just like the Lois Asay V'Asay is Eino Shavu Bakol? Then it's Hadardina to regular say, Lois Asay V'Asay, the Ein Asay, Doichel Lois Asay V'Asay. Right? The Eino Shavu Bakols cancel each other out. Just to simplify it, you have an Asay on one side and Lois Asay V'Asay on the other side. Ein Asay, Doichel Lois Asay V'Asay. So it's push it that the whole mile of Asay, where it can be Doichel Lav Shein Shavu Bakol, even where it's a Lois Asay V'Asay, is a little Asay is Shavu Bakol. So when I say that Shavu Bakol, that's a mile of Asay. The Lois Asay V'Asay, as much as Lois Asay V'Asay is a huge deal, of it's Eino Shavu Bakol, no. Good, so over here Asay can be Doichel Lois Asay V'Asay. But what if the Asay is the Zelva Eino Shavu Bakol, is the same Chasar of Eino Shavu Bakol? So it's partial, it should be no different than a regular Asay that can't be Doichel Lois Asay V'Asay. Yet Tosis was bothered tremendously with this kasha. So Zokar Yitzchak midday Tosis came from the fact that Tosis asked this kasha, and Tosis made a huge deal about this kasha. It's partial, it's mefurish to me. Said Rabbi Yitzchak it's half of a This is an Ein Yitzchak. Madura Kenyana, Evena Ezra Simon Samach Beis Anaf Aleph. But either way, this is what this piece is. So Rabbi Yitzchak that it's partial from Tosis kasha that Tosis held that Yibum is Shavu Bakol. And if Yibum is Shavu Bakol, must be women are Chayiv and Yibum, just like men are Chayiv and Yibum. And this is a raya to Reb Kiva Eiger and to the Pnei Yeshua and to the Hafla, and maybe to the greatest swallow of the Hafla, that even though the Torah is only talking to the Yavam, it's not talking to the Yevamos. It says Yevamos, Yavam, Yavam, but at the end of the day, Yavam can't do the Yibum without the Yavam. And because the Yavam can't do the Yibum without the Yevamos, so that means the Torah is essentially telling the Yevamos also, Yavam, you have a mitzvah, and Yevamos, you have a mitzvah as well. And even though it's not Mefurish talking to the Yevamos, but it's implied that it means the Yavam as well. And that's why the Yavam is going to end up having the same mitzvah that the Yavam has. But the bottom line is, we started the sugya, and we said that it's mefurish in the sugya of Asay Doichel Lois Asay in the beginning of Yevamos, and it's even more mefurish on the Avchav, that just like we say Asay Doichel Lois Asay with all mitzvahs, we say Asay Doichel Lois Asay when it comes to the mitzvah of Yibum as well. And then we said, what's Chiddush? You always say Asay Doichel Lois Asay. Why would Yibum be different? The Teretz is a big reason why Yibum would be different, and that is because Yibum, there's mokum to say that the mitzvah of Yibum is only the man's mitzvah. But the Isner, any Isurei Biyah that's going to take place b'Shas Yibum will be the man's mitzvah and will be the woman's mitzvah. And maybe the only time you say Asay Doichel Lois Asay is when the same person doing the Lois Asay is also doing the Asay. But if one person is doing the Asay and the other person is doing the Lois Asay, maybe that's not going to be the case. So there's a great side to say that even though ordinarily Asay Doichel Lois Asay, maybe Yibum is different, because by Yibum there's an inherent issue, and that is maybe it's only the Yavam that's doing the mitzvah, not the Yavam, and if that's the case, maybe you can't say Asay Doichel Lois Asay. But the Teretz says it's mefurish, you do say Asay Doichel Lois Asay by Yibum. And what's Takid of Shah, and what emerges from the Gedolei Achronim is that you have to say one of two Chidushim. There's one of two Chidushim that you're mechuyev to shpar from the fact that you say Asay Doichel Lois Asay when it comes to Yibum. Other Chidush in Yevamos, other Chiddush in Asay Doichel Lois Asay. The Chiddush in Yevamos would be that just like the man has a mitzvah, so too the woman has a mitzvah. Kimavur Reb Kiva Eiger and in the Pnei Yeshua and in the Hafla. That you would have to say it's not just the man's mitzvah, it's also either Torah says Yevama Yavam Yavam, but being that the Yevama is needed in order to do the mitzvah, so it's as if the Torah is telling the Yevama, you have a mitzvah as well. Oye Shloimar. Another way you can go is to say a Chiddush not in Yevamos. Maybe the Yevama doesn't have a mitzvah, but to say a Chiddush in Asay Doichel Lois Asay. Like the Kappas Tamarim said in his Tosis Yom Kippurim in Yuma Daf Pei Vav the base, and that is that although it's true that in this dechiyah, it's only the man that has the mitzvah, she doesn't have the mitzvah. But at the same time, being that there is a tchiyah taking place, there is a mitzvah that's happening at the same exact time that she's doing this law. This is not just an ordinary loisaseh that's taking place, but this is a loisaseh that's happening b'shas ma'isa, with where one of the parties is being makayim a mitzvah, and maybe that would be enough to say, aseh doicha loisaseh, other achidish in Yevamos, other achidish and aseh doicha loisaseh, but either way a chidish. That was the point. That even though mitzvah asfar, you say, of course you say aseh doicha loisaseh. Don't you always say aseh doicha loisaseh? No, there's grace of chedushim going on over here. We'll stop here.